Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy! Okay, great. Today I have my special guest is Anne. Anne, can you say your last name for me? Because I don't want to blow it.
Tarabini.
Tarabini. Okay, I thought that's what it was, but who knows? But anyway, so Anne Tarabini, and where are you generally located, just in general?
I live in Pinole, California, which is a small town uh, on the northeastern side of San Francisco Bay.
Okay, so I imagine your weather right there right now is probably very lovely.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
It's well, we've had some strange weather patterns, but it rained yesterday, which I'm happy. But we have very good weather here.
Yep, that's fair. I have been to San Francisco once, many years ago. We drove up from Los Angeles. We had a rented car and all the way up to San Francisco and all the way back down to San Diego. So it was a really nice, that coastal road or whatever they call it. And that's very scenic. Although at times you're kind of looking over the edge going, oh, don't get too close to the shoulder there. But it's a lovely area. So let's get right into this. Do you consider yourself a quilter? I think you do, because I'm looking at behind you what's there. Or are you a general sewist? Or, well, how would you say you were a quilter?
A quilter.
Okay,
Oh,
that's good.
yeah. Although, years ago I sewed everything, but
Yep.
now just quilts.
So then how did you get started into quilting?
Uh, well, I sewed when I was very young with my grandmothers, and I think I was neither one of them quilted. I was a teenager and I had a bunch of scraps from clothes I had made, and I put it together into just squares. I sewed together into a quilt. I don't have that anymore. It probably was awful, but it worked. And then I was probably in my 20s, and I just went to a quilt show and just really liked the patterns and everything. And I started making quilts.
Okay, so
So
you've been quilting for a long time.
a long time.
I mean, I had to be careful with the way I phrase that. It
No, I'm old.
well, young at heart though, right?
You're right.
Yeah. So did anyone in your family influence you then?
For quilting,
Yeah.
no, but for sewing, yes. Both of my grandmothers sewed, as I said. I'm the only girl in a family of 6. I have 5 brothers. And so my grandmother lived down the street, and I would go down. That was like my fun time. And we would get in our sewing room and we would just sew the different things, little projects. And so I really liked working with my hands. And then my father was a sign painter and like a graphic artist. And I think I learned to sketch things out from him. So
when you plan a quilt, you actually, if you're designing your own pattern, and do you design your own patterns?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you must use those sketching talents for all of that.
Yeah, I'd like to do it by hand, but I hate the computer, but I do know a little bit of Adobe Illustrator.
Oh, okay.
So
I was going to ask you if you've ever used electric quilt.
I have it, but no, I haven't used it.
I have it,
Oh, go ahead.
but I'm not good with it.
Oh, I think it's that rabbit hole. If I used it, I wouldn't get any sewing done.
Yeah,
So,
true, because you're constantly playing with the different ways you can make your quilt with that. And you're right, it does become a rabbit hole. So I know you've got a lot of your creations right behind you. So is one of those your favorite? Are they all your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I really don't have a favorite, but I just was trying to show some different things here. Uh, so I used to teach quilting, not online, but in person.
Right.
And this is one class that I really like to teach, which was like an intermediate class. And I'm thinking, I really don't have anything online about it. So that's why I put that one up, because I don't think anybody's ever seen that before, or maybe just a picture of it.
And what about the other ones behind you too? Like, let's just take a couple of seconds here and maybe tell us a little bit about each one that we can see right now.
Well, this one is a favorite of mine because it's a mix of all kinds of different fabrics. And I don't know if you can see it, but this is all scrappy, some of it.
Yeah.
And parts of that are shirts. I like to go to the Goodwill and buy shirts for 50 cents.
Right.
And then cut them up, white shirts or shirting type things.
Right.
And then let's see, this and this, in each one of those blocks are feed sack prints.
Oh,
So I have a big collection of those, and I like to put different things in quilts. So I guess I like the stories behind quilts.
Right.
Like in this one, this fabric right there, my sister-in-law went to Holland and she brought that a little piece of that fabric back for me. So I put it in that. Let's see.
Your quilts really do tell a story by way of the fabric. And you said feed sacks, printed ones. Where do you get those? Like they don't actually make those anymore, do they?
Well, I don't think so, but my mom had a friend who pulled her aside and said, "Hey, I've got some feed sacks for your daughter." And my mom, who doesn't quilt, was, "What the heck?" So she called me up and told me, and I was so excited. And I'm from Ohio. So the next time I went back to Ohio, I met with this woman who took me to her family farm, and her mom, who was like 90, had boxes of them that
wow.
she was selling them for $1 a piece.
Oh, geez.
And I bought as many as I could.
Yeah.
And as she pulled out each one, she told me, "Oh, I made curtains, and I made curtains out of these for the dining room. I made quilts for the bedroom. All these, I made pajamas for all the kids." And anyway, so they have good little stories behind them.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, that was from a time when fabric wasn't as easy to get as it is today. And so they made use of what they had, and feed sacks right now, that there are people that, well, collect them.
I know.
Or, they're really quite popular. I haven't seen any feed sacks in my area or in any of my travels, so I may have to go down to Ohio and see if I can get there. So you were going to point out, I think, the green quilt as well.
This is I really like solids, even though I like I think I like everything. But so this was one of the first quilts I made with just solids, and it's a favorite technique of mine, which I call quick corners, where it's great for beginners because there's no matching here. And this whole quilt was done with just squares and rectangles.
Oh, okay. But it turned out really nice. Like, it looks more complicated than it is.
Right. So I like to try to teach ways to simplify certain quilt blocks. And then this one's just a little tiny sampler quilt. And when I first started teaching quilting, those were the classes that I taught all the time, were different samplers, but nobody seems to want to take a sampler class anymore. But I think that's the best way to learn quilting.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you get such a variety of both like design and technique by doing a sampler as well. So, and I like the look of a sampler quilt because it's visually, it's very interesting to the eye because there's something different here, something different there, everywhere. So yeah, it pulls you in. I guess some people are more into the modern look maybe in quilts. I don't know. So, speaking of which, then what type of quilter do you describe yourself as? Traditional, modern, freeform, scrappy?
It probably a little bit of each one of those things. I have more traditional type patterns up over here, but I really like trying to fit in as much different fabric as I can into a quilt. And so not all the time, but most of the time.
Do you have a big stash of fabric?
Yes, I do.
Of course you do. What quilter doesn't? Oh, it's hidden. Ah.
All of these move.
Oh, that's great. The movie, well, that's a great idea.
It's a design wall.
Yeah.
My husband put it in, so.
That's nice. I have often thought of that, so I'm assuming that your design wall is several of those panels and they just slide together. I have thought about that, and I've been trying to figure out ways I could actually do that in my sewing room as well. Because
we've got it hanging. Let's see. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like closet doors.
Yeah, and it's outside of the closet where they hang from. So
that's a great idea. Oh, I'll have to get my husband looking at that. He's very clever when it comes to figuring those kind of things out.
Yeah, well, we just put a batting. I glued batting on the top of these doors, and then covered them with flannel.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great idea. And plus, I mean, dual purpose too. It hides when you're not, maybe your shelves aren't as neat as you'd like them.
Yeah, they're not. I didn't clean up, sorry.
Well, that's okay. You didn't have to clean up for me. That's fine. You disguised it well anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that takes me then to, we've seen now a little bit of your crafting room. Can you describe it? Is it a large space, a small space? What is it like?
I am in well, we added onto our house about 20 years ago, and I wanted a sewing room. So this is my sewing room, right off the kitchen. And then I took a class by Mary Mashuda about sewing rooms and found out I designed it all wrong. But that's the way it goes. So I have, let's see, I don't know. I have my computer stuff. I didn't clean up.
Okay.
And then I have a cutting area.
Oh, yeah.
And then let's see. Can you see?
Oh, wow.
I sew over there. And then I have a gigantic table in the middle that came out of the firehouse down the road. And it's just, I can, it's an old table, but I use that to cut on also and to base quilts. And usually when I film, I'm not in this room because it's too loud. I have a room in the back that I have set up because it's more soundproof in there. Okay. With the sewing machine. So, and my iron's back there because I get no exercise unless I walk.
Yeah, I know what that's like too. But well, actually, you look like you have a really nice space, and it looks to me nicely laid out. So I don't know that. Don't listen to these so-called experts.
Well, no, it's right in the doorway, the back door into our house that all my neighbors and everybody comes through. walks right through this room,
Oh,
and it goes right into the kitchen. And so everybody walks through this room. And that was the number one thing. Don't have your sewing room in a major thoroughway.
oh,
So
but at least they get a chance to see what you're working on when they come
yeah.
through. So, that's maybe not such a bad thing either. So, do you have a favorite tool and or technique?
Well, I told you about this, that I like that. I call them quick corners. There's other names, but instead of triangles, you just a square on a square and press it like that, and there's your triangle. I was trying to think of a tool that I like, and this is my little tool. I don't know if it's a tool, but it's a case. When I would teach kids to sew, I usually would have to start out with threading all of their needles. So I would thread them ahead of time, and then they'd all get tangled. So this, have you ever seen one of these?
Oh, I know. I've never seen one of these.
So this has about 10 different spots for needles and threaded needles. So when I start a project, I thread them, and then let's see, hold on. There's a little notch on the side here, and you put the, I can't do it backwards, sorry. You put the thread there, and then you just go like this.
Ah.
And it takes up the thread. And then when you're ready to sew, it just pulls out.
That's ingenious.
And the little lid goes on. And so, yeah, it's only a couple dollars.
I've never seen one of those. So what are they called? Do they have a name, a brand name or something for them?
I'll have to look it up.
Well, it's okay. But I'm going to say, I'm going to go on Amazon, see if I can find them. Or
let's see. Quilt dome.
Quilt dome. I'm going to write that down. That,
well, it's fun. You know, when you're like doing the binding on a and you gotta, I like to thread as many needles as I can, and then start sewing that binding. Well, they all fit in there.
That's great. See, I don't hand sew because I'm a bloody mess when I do that in more ways than one. So I do binding, use the machine for it. But I just think I do sometimes have to, hand sew, like when a seam pulls apart in the middle of your quilting, that kind of thing. So yeah, that would be, I'm going to look for one of those because I think that's ingenious. So now what kind of sewing machine do you have, or sewing machines? Because I have a feeling you probably have more than one.
Yeah, I have a Bernina. I have a Bernina 1530 that I love, and I probably wouldn't have another machine except I was getting ready for a class, and I don't know what happened, but I took it in for a tune-up, and the place that tuned it up, they said, "Oh, this is broken," or what. I never got it back the same way it was before. So I panicked because I had this class, and I went out and I bought, when I retired, I was going to buy a Bernina, a new one, a big one with the big arm or whatever area where you could quilt.
Oh yeah.
But I couldn't get that. Well, they had a special, so I bought a Bernina 550. So I sew on that most of the time, but I really like my original Bernina, the 1530. So
yeah, we get it.
I can't trust it because sometimes, like the other day, there's something weird about it. So
temperamental machine. Yeah. But yeah. I know that people who have Berninas absolutely love them. to the point where it's almost a cult. But I say I'm a Janome person. And the only reason I'm a Janome person is because my local dealer here, that's how I got into sewing, and they service them right there and they know what they're talking about. So I've never gone outside of that. But I have been tempted to look more seriously into a Bernina, but I love the Janome machine I have right now too. So, how many sewing machines does one person need? I mean, I have in this house, we have 8 different sewing machines.
Wow.
Well, they're not all sewing. Some are sergers, some are cover stitch because my husband does garment sewing, but and we both have embroidery machines as well. So yeah, we love the toys. I think that's why I became a quilter, because I just love the electronic toys and the whole bit. But so my next question then was, if you had all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment then that you would like to buy?
Actually, I'm probably good on sewing. I have 2 singers also, but the older I get, the more, I don't know, maybe that big singer with the big, I can't think what that's called, where the quilt goes through.
Oh, the throat.
The throat, yeah, okay. And so if I had all the money in the world, I would buy a robot that could cook dinner.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, I think so. Gives you more sewing time, right?
Right.
That kind of thing. So I also on the machine. So do you have a long arm, or how do you quilt your quilts?
I usually quilt my quilts by myself, the smaller ones. I'm getting too old. It's too much on my back to quilt them. This one was quilted by my friend Ruth Mary. So I send them out sometimes to be quilted. But lately, almost all the quilts that I've made have been small, and I can do them on my own. So
I think that's a trend I've noticed in myself too. My quilts have been getting smaller, even though I do have a long arm. But when I first started quilting, it was like queen size or nothing kind of a thing. But after a while you go, I don't know. And like you say, if you're going to do it on a domestic machine, pushing all that fabric, no matter how big the throat is on the machine, it still is a strain. People who don't quilt don't really realize how much your body is involved in doing this, and how painful it can be too if you don't get up and stretch. And I have a tendency to just sit there for hours in front of the machine and try to get up out of the chair afterwards. That's a bit of a problem. So you got to stretch. So have you ever belonged to an in-person group like a guild or anything, or a design team or an online group?
I'm part of the Threadheads. Which we are a group of ladies who got together probably over 20 years ago. And we've had people come and go in that group. And during the pandemic, a lot of us are older, so we didn't meet during the pandemic. We just started meeting lately. But we meet once a month and we exchange ideas. Not everybody is a straight quilter. Some of them are, we've got knitters, we've got paper craft. One gal picked up miniatures during the pandemic. Oh, it's amazing the stuff she brings. So, and we make usually once every year or so, we make a quilt for charity, usually for the veterans.
Right.
So.
Oh, it sounds good. It's good to be in with a group. I do a lot of online groups and that kind of thing, and I just find they're inspiring. You learn things from other people. If you're having a problem, somebody has a solution for it and everything. I really like that. I used to belong to an in-person guild, but I was the only guy with 100 ladies. And yeah, that didn't work out all that well. That's a story.
I'm lucky because in the Bay Area, we have lots of guilds, lots of famous quilters, and activities for quilters. So you can be a guest at the guild to listen to when speakers come in. And sometimes our quilt shops, like Cotton Patch, is run by the husband and wife who are C&T Publishing
Oh,
Company.
yes, yes.
Okay, so Carol Lee, she'll organize fabric designers or different people to come in to give talks. So
Right.
I like to go to things like that.
Yeah, those are very informative kind of things. So that touched on two things. Now, my next question. So first of all, let's talk about, do you have any favorite experts or people that you follow on a regular basis, or you go to for inspiration or for ideas? I mean, you've been quilting a long time, so I can't imagine there are a lot of people who know much more than yourself about.
No, no, there's a lot of people. um, I've told you earlier, I'm not such a, even though I am on the computer, I'm not really tech savvy. And so I people I follow, when you say follow, are people that I've taken classes from or I see from time to time. So this, I pulled this book out. Sally Collins, she's a great quilt teacher. I don't think she teaches much anymore, but she has lots of books. If you're interested in learning about drafting or how to draw up a quilt block, this
Right.
is a great book
And that's called Drafting
for the creative quilter.
for the Creative Code. I want to look that one up, because as I said, I do have electric quilt, but I don't really like it.
Yeah,
It's
so she's really good. And let's see. I've got a lady that I took a class from. She was a great teacher. And I took this class, I'm sorry to say, 5 years ago. I've done nothing. But I really I really want to get into making more pictorial type quilts.
right.
And so let's see, can you see?
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's from a class by a lady named Sandra Bruce.
Sandra
And
Bruce.
Sandra Bruce, Bruce. And she teaches classes and she's a quilt artist. And she's got a method that I've never seen before. And basically, I think there were almost 20 of us in class, and all 20 quilts, at least the part that I saw, looked great. So anyway, it's
wanted-
kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, because I've been playing with that idea too, so I'll have to look her up as well with that, for those kind of techniques. So then we were talking about, you mentioned quilt stores in the Bay Area. So do you have a favorite store or stores? I'm assuming you probably go to the stores to get your fabric, or do you buy a lot of it online, or do a little of both?
A little bit of both. Usually go to the stores because I'm old time. I got to look at it,
Yeah.
feel it.
I know. No.
So, and my husband and I go on a lot of road trips across the country, and his thing is trains and my thing are quilts. So we stop, and we're old, so we take our time and we stop. I've got, everywhere I go, I've got the quilt stores mapped out.
Yep.
And so actually right after the pandemic, I started filming, taking pictures and talking to the owners of different shops and then making little things. But I love going to different quilt stores, and every one of them's got something different that
I like
I can't
that too.
that I like. And the first thing I ask them is, what do you have that's unusual that nobody else has?
Yeah.
But if I had to pick my favorite store, it's out of business. It was called the Quilt Box. It was in Dry Ridge, Kentucky, out in the middle of nowhere. You had to go down a dirt road to get to it. It She started in a log cabin that was like 200 years old on her property, and she taught classes and then just kept expanding. And was just a wonderful place for a quilt store.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I like to do that too. I like to go plot out if we're going somewhere, look for where the quilt stores are and go there. And like you said, each one is a little bit different. And I'm always looking for something that I haven't seen before to latch onto. And if they've got a lot of it, I want it. All kind of a thing. So, do you have any challenges or goals for the future in terms of projects you might like to do?
Well, the one I just showed you, I'd like to start doing a little bit more things like that. I didn't mention earlier, but I am an I Spy nut. I love I Spy fabric, and my daughter has lots of friends having children, and so I make a lot of baby quilts, and so I've got lots of I Spy quilts planned. And let's see. And my other project has become more social media savvy.
Yes, well, if you struggle with computers, it's definitely going to be a learning curve on that one too. But good for you to do that. I do believe that's why I like quilting, because as you get older, it's very easy to become stagnant, and you don't stimulate your mind. And I find quilting does that. It taps into my creativity, and there's always new things to be learned in it as well, new challenges. So yeah, I think, and so same with social media, there's always challenges there, but it keeps us going. So I always say to people that one of my bugaboos is that when people who are not quilters, when we refer to what we're doing as an art, they think it's a craft. And when they think of the word craft, they think of a glue gun and construction paper. And I'm on a quest sort of a thing, or a mission, to make sure that everybody I talk to knows that quilters are artists, that our medium is fabric. So as an artist, because you are, I can see your artwork behind you, how would you describe yourself as an artist? It's a very hard question, I know. So take a second to think about it.
I'm probably more of a graphic artist. Just because if I have to draw straight lines, I'm good.
Yeah.
Once I have to get it at anything organic, I curves, whatever. Well, I can do that on a computer, but so I'm more comfortable doing that. I wish I could draw, like people's faces or whatever. And that's kind of why I'm pushing myself to do more of that. But right now, graphic artist, I guess.
Yeah, you brought up the term graphic artist, which is something I am sure that some people who don't quilt, or even some people who do quilt, may not often look at that. But if you think about it, quilting is geometry. It is a lot of putting a lot of straight lines and squares and rectangles together to create new shapes. So, and that's art. That is art. Some of the greatest art in the world, or greatest artists, were graphic artists, or are graphic artists. So yeah, and I think people need to understand that about us. It just isn't you get two pieces of fabric and sew them together. There's so much more involved in the whole process. So let's talk about, we're talking about social media. So you have a YouTube channel. So can you tell me what your YouTube channel is called and why you started a YouTube channel?
Well, I actually have a website called learnhowtoquilt.com. Don't forget .com, because if you put in learn how to quilt, you'll get 1,000 other things. So I started that website, I don't know how many, probably 20 years ago. And mainly because I'm teaching class and people go home and forget, or, wanted a reminder. And so I thought, well, this will be a good thing to do. But at that time, they didn't have YouTube. And to make a video, you had to save the pictures, had to save the sound, you had to get them to mesh, and then you had to figure out a way to get them on the internet.
Yeah, good job.
So when YouTube came around, it was like, oh, I can just push a button and it'll become a movie. And so that's how I ended up with the YouTube station, mainly because it was a way for me to do a video and to get it on my website. It was the easiest way to do that. So I would make videos that could fit into, like, on my website, I have the basics. And so in the base, if you click on that little tab, there's drafting, and there's all videos on making your pattern, how to draft, so forth. And then there's sewing, and there's all kinds of videos on sewing the 1/4-inch seam, And then there's finishing your quilt, and then other techniques. And so my videos drop, I don't know how else to describe it, but they drop into my website. There really weren't so much for getting a YouTube audience. Although now I see that I'm trying to change that up a bit, I guess.
And so what's your YouTube channel called? The same thing?
Learnhowtoquilt.com.
Okay, great. Because I'm going to put the links for both that and the website into the show notes below this interview when it goes up. So, and I'm going to be checking them out too. So for sure. I've already checked out some, but I didn't really check out your website. So I'll have to check that one out as well. So as someone who has been quilting for a long time and is also a teacher of quilting, do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get started into quilting?
I think it depends on your personality, because I see people that, I want to make this pattern, which is the hardest pattern. I wouldn't even want to tackle it. But they're adamant, and they push themselves to do everything perfect, and they're going to do it. So yeah, if you want to start something hard, go ahead. Then there's other people that, I'm not sure if I could sew a straight line. But so I think there's so many techniques and so many different things out there. I think you have to look to see what's right for you.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like what you're also suggesting is don't be put off by it. If you want to do it, just do it.
That's right.
Done. So I do want to bring up, though, that we are both involved in something that's coming up in July, the International Stitch Marathon. And I am telling my people on my channel about that. And I am going to also direct them to the promo videos that people have made for their own YouTube channels, because that's a really great source of probably some new webs or new YouTube channels that people haven't seen, and you're one of those as well. So if anybody is going to join us for the International Stitch Marathon, they will probably see you at some point on there as well. And so they can probably chat with you. If they have some questions or things they might want to ask you, then that might be a great opportunity, sort of in person, even though it's online. But it'll be live.
Yeah, I'm excited and a little scared.
I don't think we get scared. If we just make it work. Or whatever with it. So I want to thank you. Oh, do you have anything more you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Well, I'd just like to say that I would really like people to think about teaching someone to sew, whether it's a child or their friend, because that's a lifelong skill. And I really think doing something with your hands is important. And we don't do enough of that these days. So I encourage you to, if you're a sewer or quilter, is to help somebody out and teach them a new skill.
Yeah, pay it forward. As they
That's right.
Well, this has been great, Anne. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. I find it fascinating. I will have all your links in the show notes below so other people can experience your social media areas as well. And yeah, this was great. So thank you so much, and stay on the line after I end this, because I'll just have a little conversation again with you. But thanks again. Okay, thanks, Anne.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Okay.